And we are live on this very special edition of A to Z Sports Dallas and Minnesota because we've got a crossover show this week for you guys. It's Cowboys versus Vikings. I'm Mauricio Rodriguez, and we've got Tyler Fornes ready to talk about this big time Week 15 matchup. Tyler, how are you, man?
You know what? Life is pretty good, Mauricio. This is a really fun matchup. The first time that these two teams have met in Dallas since that 2019 Sunday night game. So we're really excited about it. And both these teams are in a spot where they can still somehow make the playoffs. It's we would have expected better records at this point, but we're in a good spot.
I was just about to say, man, that hey, there's this thing about Cowboys versus Vikings where it doesn't quite feel like Lions versus Rams this weekend. It doesn't feel like Packers versus Broncos and these Bills versus Patriots, like these high
Mm-hmm.
stakes games around the NFL. But I'm still pretty damn excited about it. And Cowboys fans, I know they're dealing with difficult emotions. Do we have a playoff opportunity or not? I'm sure Vikings fans are on the same boat. But regardless, like this has the makings to be a fun matchup for a lot of reasons.
It really does. And I think the first thing we can kind of look at, Mauricio, is the quarterback position. And Dak Prescott's one of the best in the league. He might be the most disrespected quarterback in the National Football League, if we're being 100% honest. And then JJ McCarthy has earned almost every ounce of disrespect that he's gotten due to his incredibly inconsistent play in his first year as a starter. And figuring out what both of these quarterbacks will actually be on Sunday in itself is a dissertation paper to get your master's degree, because
Yep.
nobody really knows. It's such an interesting conundrum to have a conversation about. And I still, after watching JJ McCarthy through a couple training camps and through only seven starts through 2 years, I still have no idea what he's going to give me on a game to game basis.
Man, it's gonna be a fun matchup, and we'll break it down over the next few minutes here. By the way, we're streaming live to both Facebook and Dallas-based platforms, so we're gonna have some trash talking maybe in the chat. Shout out to everyone who is joining us live, man. It's gonna be fun. Before we dive into things, though, we're brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Shout out to them. And by the way, they're running an awesome promo. By using promo code A to Z, you in your first $5 play, you will receive an additional $75 in bonus credits. So make sure you take advantage of that. And throughout today's show, we're gonna be giving some plays that we're gonna be making ourselves over the weekend. So, man, let's kick things off. You mentioned Dak Prescott. I'm gonna be honest with you, Tyler. The biggest war, the biggest matchup that I'm excited about Sunday night is Brian Flores versus Dak
Mm-hmm.
Prescott. Now, you mentioned you gave Dak Prescott his flowers. Now I'm going to return the favor. Brian Flores is one of my favorite coaches in the entire NFL. He's so fun to watch. Like his
Mm-hmm.
defenses, the way that they confuse quarterbacks. How is it that the Vikings are one of the most aggressive teams in the NFL, blitzing the quarterback, but they play a ton of zone? Like that
Mm-hmm.
is just fantastic, man. Dak Prescott versus Brian Flores, the matchup to watch for me.
Yeah. So one of the interesting things about the genesis of this defense, because you think Brian Flores, one of the first things you're going to think about is the Bill Belichick tree. You're going to run a lot of cover one, cover three, cover seven, and it's going to be a lot of man match kind of concepts. Belichick and Saban created man match stuff with the Cleveland Browns in the early 1990s, and Belichick's really the only one that was using it for a long time in the National Football League. Then he goes down to Miami and he kind of creates his own spin on it, where he's just a psycho. And I mean this in
Yep.
the most complimentary way. He wants to run the amoeba defense. He wants to have guys who can play all over the field. And by doing so, it gives him the opportunity to be a heavy, heavy blitzer. You combine all of that and then transport it to Minnesota, he creates an entirely new defense. And it wasn't that he created it himself. He took the 2021 Pitt Panthers defense. Because remember, Pitt and the Pittsburgh Steelers share a stadium. They have some common facilities. So he goes to Pat Narduzzi when he, as his year in Pittsburgh, talks to him about the defense. And basically, you can do this in college and in the NFL. Nobody was psycho enough to try, but Brian Flores did, running a ton of heavy blitzes and a lot of simulated pressures with zone behind it. Almost everybody would run man. He was the only one brave enough to run zone. So in 2023, it took a few weeks to really hone it in, and then they were dominant until the final four games, and they allowed 30 points a game, and everybody just figured out, these Bengal Hawk blitzes, wherever the center ends up sliding, either left or right, those two guys will drop back into coverage. Well, we can just pepper dig routes right behind him and just continue. And those dagger concepts just killed him. So they evolved and they took out Bengal Hawk completely. I don't think I've seen a single one since that 2023 season, which one of my favorite blitzes of all time, but it's easily beatable when you don't have guys who can drop back and really get back fast enough in coverage, which is why for years Anthony Barr was so good, because he could line up at the line of scrimmage and all of a sudden be 10 yards deep, no problem. And it's like, oh crap, I don't know what to do anymore. But over the course of the last couple of years, this has been a very player-led defense. And they have such a big say into what is actually going to happen. And their continuity between the coaches and the players and the growth of guys like Dallas Turner, who can drop into coverage, same with Andrew Van Ginkel, and the cross dog blitzes that they run, just it's such a fun unit. And they can show you 6 different looks before they actually just drop back into a basic Tampa 2. They're so incredibly smart. And that to me is the number one thing with this defense. There's versatile players, there's talented players, there's great scheme. But the reason it's successful is because almost everybody on that unit is really smart and can communicate at a high level, because that is what really maximizes what this defense can do.
And that is going to be the puzzle that the Cowboys need to figure out on Sunday night.
Mm-hmm.
I am very intrigued about what does Brian Flores do in terms of his blitzing approach, because you don't really want to blitz Dak Prescott for the most part, because he is one of the best quarterbacks against the blitz in the NFL. And not only that, he has been that for so many years, where you almost expect Flores to be a little bit more cautious. The problem for the Cowboys, though, is that the Lions blitzed them a little bit last Thursday night football, and they had trouble with it. And I think the reason why is, you mentioned the Vikings defense being so good because of its players. The Cowboys have an offensive tackle problem, if we're being real. The Cowboys have a situation where Terrence Steele, the right tackle, is a liability in pass protection. And Tyler Guyton, he's had some good moments, some bad moments. It doesn't look like he's going to be ready to go for Sunday night. Tyler Guyton was injured a few weeks ago, and then he's missed a couple games. Nate Thomas has been the backup that has stepped in for him. Nate Thomas, promising player, violent, but the technique is not there right now. And there's a ton of plays where he's just out of position because of his footwork, because of his hand placement, and he doesn't get himself in positions to win a lot of these pass pro reps. And that concerns me going up against this Vikings defense, because you would think that the Vikings need to blitz to generate pressure. That's not the case. When they rush 4, according to Sports Info Solutions, they lead the NFL in pressure rate. So I wonder if the Vikings go into this matchup with a mentality of, we're just going to rush 4 guys all the time. We're going to do a lot of simulated pressures and try to catch Dak Prescott off guard and try to take away some of these quick routes to George Pickens, who has been lethal with the slant, but the Lions were sitting on it the entire game last week, and it paid off for them, even with an interception in one of those plays. So really wondering what that approach is going to be for Brian Flores. But man, it doesn't sound like a great idea to blitz Dak Prescott just because he's so good at it, and he's got 2 elite wide receivers in Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. That's going to be a huge story going into this one for sure.
Yeah, and one thing you really have to look at with the Brian Flores in quote-unquote blitzing is most of his blitzes are just sending the 5 guys, sending your 2 edge rushers and then your 3 defensive tackles. They run a ton of base this season, and it's been the one major changeup from last year, because they had 49 sacks in 2024. 4 of them came from defensive tackles. This year, the Vikings have 33 sacks. 12 and a half have come from defensive tackles. One of the big reasons for that change is the quickest path to the quarterback is straight ahead. And they prioritize defensive tackle a lot, Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave. And then the emergence of Jalen Redmond might be the best untold story in the National Football League, coming from Oklahoma, undrafted, and then playing in the XFL in 24 and being the 90th man on the roster, earning a roster spot in the starting job. And he was the reason Harrison Phillips, their nose tackle, got traded. But to kind of go all encompassing here, sending 5 guys is just normal for Brian Flores. So blitz rates are a little bit different with what this Vikings team is versus, say, the Cowboys with Matt Eberflus. Eberflus doesn't blitz a lot. He is just, he's Matt Eberflus. We know what that is. It's
frustrating, Tyler. I don't like that. Hey, man, I don't do it. Last week more so, the Cowboys were getting to Jared Goff by blitzing him, and then they just stopped doing so. Like they were like, "Yep, we're not gonna blitz anymore."
Mm-hmm.
Trust me, man. Cowboys fans hate that about Eberflus.
Oh, I get it. But here's what I want to say about blitzing Dak Prescott. Just because they're good against the blitz doesn't mean they're great against the blitz. And I think Jared Goff is the prime example. He is so good at being able to beat the blitz. But when you look at his numbers against the blitz on an overall level, like the 2024 season is what I like to point to, his passer rating, not against the blitz, was like 124. His passing rates against the pass rating against the blitz was like 71. And you make life harder for him. And blitz, not all blitzes are created equal either. So the Vikings really don't have the horses to go man on man, which is another reason why they played zone. I think it's more of a necessity than what Brian Flores truly wants to do. You make do with what you have, and Flores has done a phenomenal job of that in his 3 years in Minnesota. But if you send blitzes and you get creative with those blitzes and Dak has to all of a sudden scramble, the Vikings have the horses to run with him. They're not going to get beaten by Dak Prescott around the corner. But the one caveat, they have been terrible at finishing at the quarterback this year. It's hilarious how many times you could set it to Benny Hill music, how many times the Vikings have had a quarterback in the grasp and just not been able to take him down. So I think they'll still try and pressure. I think they're really going to focus on Grenard, who is honestly, he's hurt, but I think he's hurt more than we're led to believe because his impact just hasn't been the same for the last few weeks. And Dallas Turner, Andrew Van Ginkel, they're going to really want to pressure those tackles. And the one thing, as I mentioned earlier, the cross-dog blitzes, where you got one linebacker hitting the center, and then kind of faking it, the other linebacker hitting the guard, and then that first linebacker just loops right around and has a free shot at the quarterback. It's insane how good they are at it. It's crazy how successful they are consistently. That's going to be the one thing you want to see Dak Prescott be able to navigate. Those cross-dog blitzes, you can beat those. I think this Vikings team is beatable.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I think the Cowboys might be a little bit more prepped for it this week because when I was prepping for the Cowboys-Lions game, I was watching Lions-Vikings because obviously next to opponents, I saw it as an opportunity. Yeah. The Vikings run that cross-dog blitz versus the Lions on that game. It works. And the Lions ran the same cross-dog blitz that they ran against them, but they did it against the Cowboys, and it got them home. Dak Prescott was got on one of those, so hopefully the Cowboys are prepped for it. Now, let me get your thoughts on this, though. Going into this game, I agree. The corners the Vikings have, they should be losing matchups versus Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. Like, I firmly believe that. To me, it's going to be about getting that pocket and keeping it clean for Dak Prescott to work with it. However, I do look at this Vikings defense and I'm like, kind of want to run against them. Kind of want to run the football against them. I know EPA-wise, they're 20th according to RBSDM.com versus 6th versus the pass. So, like, the math is simple there. You want to run against the Vikings. However, the Cowboys have been struggling as of late. They are not the run game powerhouse that we thought they were early in the season. Since week 6, they're like one of the worst offenses in success rate running the football, but they will still get some big gains here and there. Javonte Williams can always break out for like a 15-yard gain or 9-yard gain, 7-yard gain, and he will get several of those in a single game, but the down-to-down success is not there. Where can the Cowboys attack the Vikings in this area? Just because to me, it feels like you want to run the football against this Vikings team.
Yeah, and the one way that this Brian Flores defense is set up is very simple. Beat me by 1,000 cuts. They're not going to let you get explosives. And that is something that this Cowboys offense loves to do. They love to throw it down the field to CD. They love to throw it down the field to Pickens. And even though the Vikings have smaller corners, they're feisty. They know how to attack the football. Isaiah Rodgers has the only ever 99.9 Pro Football Focus grade in a single game. And he did it by attacking the football. Now, he's not going to score 2 touchdowns every game, and we've seen that come to fruition. But they are not afraid to go up against bigger guys. They're not afraid to stay patient and attack the ball. And one thing that this Brian Flores defense will force you to do is check down. Throw 6-yard routes. Run the ball. If you put together a 17-play, 90-yard drive, bravo. Good job. That's what they want you to do. They want you to have to grind it out. They don't want to give you explosives. and they've done a phenomenal job at not allowing them. So it's going to be interesting from the Cowboys' perspective how much they're going to try and generate those explosive plays versus trying to run the ball. And the Vikings don't have a traditional nose tackle. They just don't. But what they have done a really good job of is mitigating that over the course of the last 6-7 weeks. They're doing a lot more slanting, and they're trying to attack gaps instead of just play one-on-one, because that's what was getting them into trouble earlier this year, especially against the Falcons when Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier just ran all over them. They slant those gaps. They tackle really well in space with Eric Wilson and Blake Cashman, and then they pursue to the ball. They have athletes on the defensive line who can run. Dallas Turner ran a 4.47 at the combine 2 years ago. So if they're going to be able to win, death by 1,000 cuts. That's the strategy. But will the Cowboys embrace that, or will they try to generate all those explosives?
Yeah, man. I feel like going into Sunday, I don't see the Cowboys having, like, at AT&T Stadium, they've lit defenses up. Like, they're scoring over 30 points, over 40 points throughout the year. They had that 40-40 tie versus the Packers. This game doesn't feel like that's going to happen. And when the Cowboys have faced top-tier defenses like the Broncos, they have struggled a little bit more to move the ball at that explosive rate. My hope, though, looking at it from a Cowboys perspective, is how many points do you need to beat the JJ McCarthy-led Vikings, which leads us to that part of the conversation, which, man, I just don't know what to make out of the JJ McCarthy news. Are you, because I know a lot of Vikings fans that are done, like already. Year 2, they're done, which is really year 1 for JJ McCarthy. What do you make out of this inconsistent season that we've seen out of McCarthy, and do you think he'll right the ship with the playmakers that he has, including the playmaker that is Justin Jefferson?
It's such a difficult conversation because it's got many facets. If you want to build like a pie chart of blame, I think about 50% of it has to go on JJ McCarthy. But on top of that, it's not all his fault because so much of it has to do with injuries. And you don't necessarily think about, an injury just takes him out for the season. But then that meniscus, he had to rehab it through April. And that takes away all of your ability to really focus on little things. They wanted to modify mechanics. They wanted to improve things. He's got that leg whip, and he has a super wide base that helps it, that really takes away power. He doesn't have a strong arm in a sense of, you think of strong arm guys like Brett Favre, John Elway, Josh Allen, where they can just pistol whip it without even trying. They can pistol whip it without having a base underneath him. When JJ McCarthy is a solid base, he has just as strong of an arm, but he doesn't have that cheat code strong arm, because he did throw a 61-mile-an-hour fastball at the combine, second fastest ever, just behind Joe Milton. He can throw a hard ball, but the mechanics get all over the place. And in Kevin O'Connell's offense, it is complicated. It is intuitive. But on top of that, we saw last year with Sam Darnold, when you really embrace it and you go for those shots, they won 14 games last year, mainly because Sam Darnold maximized what the offense can give you. Not always consistent, but if you're explosive, consistency doesn't matter that much. You just have to be consistent enough. And he was the best deep ball thrower in the National Football League last year by multiple metrics, and second in a bunch of others. So McCarthy was running that offense initially, and in training camp, he looked great. The mechanics looked much improved. It looked like he was doing a really good job. And 7-on-7s, 11-on-11s can be a little deceiving, but he was great against New England Patriots. So much so that the Patriots beat was like, hey, did we really take the right guy in Drake May? Should we maybe have thought about McCarthy? Like, that was part of the conversation. And then he wins Offensive Player of the Week in his first ever start, and then he just sucks because he's thinking too much. The game is too fast for him. He's still adapting to those things. And we forget that even though he's a second-year guy, he's a first-year starter. He never played in his first year. So those elements are catching up to him. And O'Connell, even though he kept seeing good things in practice, it wasn't translating to game day. And it took 6 starts to really be like, okay, we need to just tell him to, he literally said, shut up. I don't care if you think this guy's going to do that, or Mikey Sanders still, and he's probably going to do this on this play. Stop thinking and just play the game. And then that's how we saw the Commanders game. He played more free at a 0.39 EPA per play, far and away his best performance. I believe his only positive EPA performance on the season. And it felt like a guy that we expected to see all year. Not perfect, but a much more under control player who was playing within the context of the offense and maximizing what he was able to do. If you see that guy from this past Sunday against the Cowboys, the Vikings can put up 30, 40 points. Dead serious. But that's the question. We have not seen any kind of consistency outside that Commanders game. Can he generate it? I want to see it before I believe it, because he is not giving us a reason to trust that he can deliver that just yet.
The good news for JJ McCarthy, Tyler, is that this Cowboys defense, it made Russell Wilson look like prime Russell Wilson early in the season. It gave us one of the best games we've seen all year for Bo Nix. It made Jacoby Brissett the starter for the Arizona Cardinals. Like, this Cowboys defense has struggled all year long. Now it's gotten better. And Dallas Cowboys hard hitter here had a comment earlier today. He said the defense needs to win the war, especially the secondary. Mm-hmm. You were talking about those deep shots that Sam Darnold liked to take on this offense. Maybe McCarthy hasn't been as consistent with those, but one of the things that I would imagine the Vikings are going to try to do versus the Cowboys, and it is one of the biggest keys to the game for Dallas, is they're going to want to attack the flats. They want to attack like the outside underneath throws, really, because the Cowboys, they're using this 5-man front. As much as you let them run it, they will run it. They want to get 3 defensive tackles on that defensive line, and they want to have like those 5-on-5 looks versus the offense, whether it's the run game, whether it's the pass game, because in the run game, they just plug every gap, and in the passing game, they will generate one-on-one looks for guys like Quinnen Williams, who has been an absolute beast since he's joined the Cowboys. The problem is having those 5 guys on the defensive line, especially guys that cannot drop back and cover consistently. What I've seen the Chiefs and the Lions both do is they want to attack those flats. They want to attack those underneath throws and kind of be like, okay, we dare you. We dare you to make the open field tackle. We dare you to limit the yards after the catch here that we get. In the last couple of games, 6 out of 10 passing yards from opponents have come after the catch for the Cowboys. And when you're talking about the likes of Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, like that scares me a little bit. I think the biggest key for the Cowboys on defense is going to be making those tackles. Because I mean, if the game plan for the Vikings is beating the Cowboys deep with JJ McCarthy, I think McCarthy is going to be our ally on game day, talking about the Cowboys side. But those underneath throws, he might be able to hit those. And these receivers, they're going to get open against the Cowboys corners, I think. So can the Cowboys tackle? And similar to what you were talking about with the Vikings defense, can they make the Vikings need to grind out those long drives to get some points? And I think that's going to be huge.
Yeah, it's fascinating that the best way to beat these Cowboys is probably attacking the flats, attacking short. They do run some speed outs. They've really improved the screen game, which has honestly been bad since Kevin O'Connell took over. The one thing that really concerns me about this Vikings potential game plan is O'Connell has been very unwilling to run a short passing game. He, for better or worse, he is a psychopath and he wants to throw it down the field and he wants to do it consistently. And adjusting for his young quarterback has been a challenge for that reason. And he's shown he can do a lot of this stuff in practice, but it's not translating in game day. Will he be willing to just continue to pepper the flats and attack? Because remember, Addison and Jefferson, as great as they are, being yak guys is not something that you think about with those two. You think about route running savants, guys who you want to attack in the intermediate and deep levels of the field with a lot of nuance. That's the big thing here. So is he going to be willing to navigate that? I genuinely don't know. And if he does, I think it could be a lot of success. The Vikings have only really trusted the running game when it's been consistently explosive and when they've gotten leads. If they are tied or seven or more points behind, they abandon the run and they pass. But a lot of their passing game, like, because they'll do screens, that's just an extension of the run game. So a lot of these run pass splits are a little bit disingenuous. But I do believe that if they just follow what you said, attack the flats, pepper the flats, and really punish those 5-man fronts, because McCarthy sees a lot of them in practice. The Vikings love 5-man fronts. They run a lot of 3-4 base. So it's not going to be a surprise for him to see that kind of stuff. I do think double moves. They burned the Commanders a couple times, but they weren't able to connect, mainly because their offensive line was just getting blitzed, and McCarthy just couldn't step up or step out of into a throwing window to make the throws. Um, like there's going to be opportunities, but if he has to throw, like if this becomes a shootout, Vikings are probably losing this game unless they can bait Dak Prescott into a couple interceptions and maybe house one, because I don't think McCarthy has the ability right now to play on that kind of level with a quarterback like Dak Prescott and go blow for blow.
Yeah, man. And early in the Instagram chat, we were getting a question from CJ, which was, hey, do you think the Cowboys win? Alec is saying GP3 have a bounce back game. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest storylines for this game as well. If we're diving a little bit here into predictions, man, I think, hey, brought to you by Underdog Fantasy again, man. I'll tell you what my Underdog Fantasy play of the week is. Like the biggest play that I like. Give me Javonte Williams going for higher than 17.5 rush attempts. I think the Cowboys want to get into this game and they really want to kind of try to tame the Vikings defense a little bit into, getting away from the blitz, getting away from the aggressive simulated pressure stuff, and really aiming for third and shorts. If I look at the Cowboys offense over the last couple of weeks where they have struggled maybe a little bit more, especially against the Lions, they got into a lot of third and longs, even versus the Chiefs. You wouldn't notice it because Dak Prescott was killing Steve Spagnuolo's defense, but it was a lot of 3rd and 8, a lot of 3rd and 10, a lot of 3rd and 11. And I think Schottenheimer, after a long week, will want to get into this game and be like, we're bringing the Cowboys run game back, because then from there, Schottenheimer can get into what he likes the most, which is like these play action shots on early downs where Dak Prescott can get behind max protect, especially without his starting left tackle, Tyler Guyton, who, by the way, missed practice again on Friday. So it doesn't look like Guyton is going to be around for this game. I think the Cowboys are really going to want to lean into the run game. My Underdog Fantasy play of the week, man, it's got to be Javonte Williams pounding the rock higher than 17.5 times.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. I've got two that I really like. One of them's a huge long shot that can absolutely spike those lineups for you from a percentage standpoint. But I think JJ McCarthy higher than 193.5 passing yards, because you mentioned it earlier today when we were chatting. This is the Cowboys defense. They're 29th in EPA per play allowed and 30th in EPA per dropback allowed. The edge rusher room has obviously taken that unfortunate hit with the passing of Marshawn Kneeland, but even before that, it wasn't the strongest unit in the world. And you add Quinnen Williams, which is great, but it's a lot harder to generate pressure from the interior than it is on the edges. And Christian Darrisaw, there's a chance he doesn't play in this game. He missed practice the first 2 days of the week. He's missed every Thursday practice this year as part of the plan from coming back from that torn ACL and MCL. But he didn't practice on Wednesday, which raised a big red flag for me. So if he's out, it's probably going to be Justin School, and School stinks. But McCarthy has never thrown for more than 163 yards in his career. Last week was his career high. Can he throw for over 193.5? Well, it is the Cowboys. So yes, I think that's very possible. The other one I really like.
To your point, let me just say this. To your point, because I also like that play. And the reason why is JJ McCarthy might need to throw for half of that, and then his receivers get the other half. That's what's been happening on the Cowboys games. So I like that play as well, man. I got to be honest.
Mm-hmm. The other one I really like is if you can grab it on Underdog, I would throw it in your lineups. CJ Ham, fullback CJ Ham, higher than 0.5 rushing and receiving touchdowns. Why? Last week, the Vikings had 4 touchdowns. 3 of them were to tight ends. It was also the most snaps that CJ Ham has played in the Kevin O'Connell era. They ran a lot of 12 and 13 personnel. They ran a lot of 21. They were using that fullback. When they used the fullback, O'Connell has a tendency to draw something up for Ham. Now, is it a guarantee that he even gets a touch? Absolutely not. But this is where the risk is worth the reward here, because I can easily see a situation where it's 1st and goal at the 1, and they run a fullback dive, or they love to do like little things like a wheel route to CJ Ham, and they'll treat him like a tight end, or just a dump off into the flat with like one of those play action rollouts. And then, CJ Ham just runs an arrow route. He's wide open. Nobody's there. I think that is going to be a really fun one for those lineups. And hey, with that first $5 play with the code A to Z, you do get the 75 in bonus credits. Then on top of that, you can have a little bit more fun when CJ Ham gets that touchdown.
Man, I hope that doesn't happen. I don't want a fullback scoring on the Cowboys defense, man. That's going to feel like rock bottom. But all kidding aside, I love the plays. Let's get into final predictions. But first, let me say hi over here. We've got Joey Bella saying hi from the YouTube chat. We've got Edgar saying, hey, Eberflus hates the blitz, and I hate Eberflus. And he adds, we need Javonte to run the football inside the tackles, adding our fullback in the play. So you want the Vikings fullback to be in play. Cowboys fans want Hunter Lipke to be in play as well. We might have a fullback fest. Tyler, what's your final score prediction for Sunday Night Football, Cowboys versus Vikings?
I'm going to be honest, I really don't like doing final score predictions because they're so weird. But if I had to make a prediction, I'm gonna go Cowboys in this one just because the Vikings, they're so unpredictable. And I'm gonna go Cowboys 27, Vikings 26, where Kevin O'Connell just says, we need to win to make the playoffs. Screw it, let's go for 2, and they fail.
Oh, that would be a fantastic finish to the game. Love the prediction. Give me the Cowboys as well. I think the Cowboys struggle a little bit to move the football versus this Vikings pass defense. I think the Cowboys turned the ball over at least once in this game. I respect Brian Flores' defense a lot. But I also think George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb are tough to deal with. They are really tough to deal with. So I'll say the Cowboys do hit 30 points again at AT&T Stadium with one play and with a bunch of Brandon Aubrey field goals, probably. Give me Cowboys 30. Give me Vikings 23. I think they have one of their best offensive days with JJ McCarthy, but I think it's going to be a fun matchup, man. I think it's going to come down to taking care of the football, to keeping the quarterbacks clean, and man, let's see what this game ends up in, but it sounds exciting. Any closing thoughts for you, Tyler?
Yeah, the Vikings, they need a million things to happen in order to make the playoffs. They need the Bears to lose out, the Lions to only beat the Bears, and they already got one loss from the Bucs. They need another one from them in order to get that playoff spot. Oh, and they have to win out. But they do have some control because they have the Cowboys, who they also need to lose. They have the Lions, who need to lose. So there's some control. But yeah, the Vikings are making the playoffs. This is about figuring out JJ McCarthy. And if you want to do that, Joe Burrow rumors have already started because of those really odd comments about him not having fun playing football on Wednesday. And of course, Vikings fans are going to run with it because Bengals fans ran with, oh, Justin Jefferson's getting traded, when the Vikings literally showed no interest, and it was only national media trying to spark conversation during a dead time in the month of May. So if he doesn't show that he's for sure a guy that is worth developing or that you can count on, Vikings are going to have another quarterback in. That doesn't mean that they're going to start over McCarthy, but they're going to have at least a backup option. And this is about figuring out who's going to be on this team next year, and coaches trying to save their job, mainly on the offensive side of the ball.
P. Burns over here on Instagram, he has the Cowboys 35, the Vikings 27. So some differences here in the type of games that we're going to see. Edgar says Cowboys 30 and the Vikings 20. So a lot of people predicting Cowboys wins, including us. We're in a similar boat, Tyler. I don't think the Cowboys make the postseason. However, that Eagles team, they might end up collapsing. So you never know. You never know. That Eagles team is 0-3 in the last 3. We'll see how they do to close out the year. But
it happened 2 years ago, right?
Dude, it happened 2 years ago, and they get the Buffalo Bills on the road. And if they get Jaden Daniels in one of those two matchups, it's not going to be a guaranteed win. You got to beat Jaden Daniels at the end of the day. So we'll see what that ends up looking like for the Cowboys. But for now, controlling what they can control, and that's beating the Vikings on Sunday Night Football. We'll see how things go. For more Cowboys versus Vikings coverage, check out atozsports.com. Tyler will have you covered with the Vikings, and I will try to have you covered with the Cowboys on my side. So it's going to be a fun weekend, man. Enjoy it, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.